Hey, everybody, it's Mike from the Mike Wagner Show, powered by SonicWeb Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs, and brought to you by our official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Molson-Zia Missing, available on amazon.com/Mia Molson-Zia. We're here with an amazing lady who earned a bachelor's and master's of music from Juilliard School, and also has performed as a classical violinist in top venues around the world, like the Carnegie Hall, Boston Symphony, Ravinia, Verbier, and also La Jolla Summerfest and Aspen Music. And she's also a concert master of the Deutsche Symphony Orchestra, the Juilliard, McGill Chamber, and Pacific Music. Also toured with Sir James Galway, Chris Body, and also featured violinist at the Kennedy Center, Jack Singer Concert Hall in Calgary, and the Blue Note in New York City. And she has a brand new book out, which basically just breaks classical music down to where everybody can just, bite-sized consume. It's kind of classical music for dummies, but she takes it to a very refreshing level. It's basically a retake, an intimidating world of classical music, blown through the walls of elitism, exclusivism, and encourages everyone to love or hate music. And to hear us all about it, the book Declassified, a low-key guide to the high-strung world of classical music, live, ladies and gentlemen, from the Plus Studios in beautiful downtown Boston, the amazing multi-talented violinist and author of the book Declassified, Arianna Warsaw-Fan Rauch, or we'll just call her Arianna. If everybody gets the full name right, I'm sure she'll give away something. I'm kidding. Arianna, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it's great to have you on board too. And you've got a great book out there, Declassified, a low-key guide to the high-strung world of classical music. You earned your bachelor's and master's of music from Juilliard School of Music. You performed as a classical violinist in major venues around the world, like the Carnegie, Ravinia, Verbier, La Jolla Summerfest, and Aspen Music, as well as Boston Symphony, concert master at Deutsche Symphony Orchestra, the Juilliard, and also McGill Chamber, Pacific Music. And also he toured with Sir James Galway, Chris Body, and featured violinist, Kennedy Center, Jack Singer Concert Hall, and the Blue Note. And you basically just have a new book. You decided to write it down, and it's just a simply refreshing retake on the intimidating world of classical music, blowing through the walls of the elitism, exclusions, and everything else. And simply, it's just, for some people, you think is classical book for dummies, but you take it to the next level, but make it more friendly. The book Declassified, a low-key guide to the high-strung world of classical music. And before getting all that, Arianna, first of all, tell us how you got started.
As a violinist or as a writer?
Yes, go way back, way back, way back.
A lot of this is in the book because it follows a narrative arc. So each chapter explores a different subject relating to classical music, and then it's framed by anecdotes from my life, and those follow a roughly chronological order. So some of these stories are in there, but I started playing the violin when I was 2.5.
Wow.
Yeah. And I became serious about it when I was 7. That's when I decided to become a violinist. And it was just something that I never really questioned once I made that decision. And it took me all the way through Juilliard. And yeah, you mentioned some of the things that I've done. And at a certain point, I started to question whether or not performing was really the right path for me, the right way to serve the god of music, as one of my manager friends. And for me, it at least right now in my life, I felt like writing this book was actually maybe a healthier and better, more fun for me way of going about it. So that is sort of the very short version of how it got.
You mentioned about taking up violin at 7, being really serious at starting at 2.5. What was that one precise moment in your life that simply said to you, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my career? That one precise moment, especially when you're at 7 or somewhere around then, says, this is what I'm going to do.
So when I was 7, I went to a concert with my dad and my violin teacher at the time. And it was a student who was playing his graduating concerto with the orchestra at Phillips Academy in Andover, Massachusetts. And he was just so amazing. And I sat there and I was completely mesmerized. And it was really the first time, I'd played violin for a few years before, but this was the first time when I felt transported by a performance, when I really felt like there was a spell that had been put over me. And that was when I knew. I just felt instantly like I had to do this with my life.
Hmm. And certainly like it as well too. Really love what you're doing. And who are some of your favorite violinists and musicians and classical figures growing up?
Oh, I loved all of the old great violin masters. So you have Heifetz, you have Milstein, Nathan Milstein. There, oh, David Oistrakh. These were all violinists who were really close to me. And of course, Anne-Sophie Mutter, because she wears these gorgeous strapless dresses. I mean, that's not why. That's probably why when I was a kid, I liked her. Now I can appreciate that she's phenomenal as a violinist too. But yeah, she appealed to me for a number of reasons. And I mean, there are so many fantastic conductors, but Bernard Haitink is one I think is amazing, and Dudamel, of course.
Hmm. And then how about some of your favorite composers growing up?
Oh yeah. So I mean all the greats. So Bach, Brahms was one of my absolute favorites, sort of between the ages of 7 and 9. Mendelssohn, the performance that I mentioned that I heard when I was 7, that was the Mendelssohn Violin Concerto that was being played, and that piece became my favorite piece for years. So Mendelssohn, basically everything Mendelssohn wrote is still up there for me. But I mean, Schumann, Mozart, Beethoven, of course. I think right now Beethoven is my I can't even say that. I can't say favorite, but Beethoven Beethoven speaks to me a lot these days. So
Mhm. And we'll break down some of the composers as well too. We'll also break down some of the 7 main compositional periods, offering insight and some of the instruments, and also breaking in the personalities as well too. Just a total breakdown in classical music in the bite-sized pieces with Arianna Warsaw-Fan Rauch. But first, you listen to the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at SonicWebStudios.com for all your needs. Look at a professional website without breaking your budget. Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs at below the competition rate. Call today 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960, or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show, get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios, take your image to the next level. Also, time to give official shout out to our official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Molson-Zia. If you love fast-paced mysteries, you love Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing is fast-paced and intriguing with an unforgettable twist. Takes place in 4 countries, 2 strangers, 1 target, where truth is illusion and those who love will be the first go missing. It's available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing by Mia Molson-Zia has garnered great reviews. And Eve 11 enjoys by Howard celebrities, including Joanna Cassie, Forbes Riley, and many others. So grab your copy today for Goes Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon. Also, check out the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com. And over 40 podcast platforms heard in over 100 countries, including Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also, Anchor FM, iTunes, Google Play, Amazon, Audible, Apple Music, and Nora. Also heard on HamiltonRadio.net every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central at HamiltonRadio.net. And coming to a few podcast platforms and few networks coming soon. Take us with you on any mobile device. Subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. Follow the Mike Wagner Show on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok today. And for great gift ideas, go to Amazon.com and check out the Mike Wagner Show podcast. T-shirts, pop sockets, throw pillows, tote bags, hoodies, makes great gifts 24/7. Go to Amazon.com and check out the Mike Wagner Show podcast. And for more great gift ideas, go to Amazon.com/Mia Molson-Zia for great books like Missing, Once, and Wrinkles. Also T-shirts, pop sockets, hoodies, phone cases, and more. Amazon.com/Mia Molson-Zia. Check it out today. I'll support the Mike Wagner Show on Anchor FM, PayPal, and the MikeWagnerShow.com. Make sure you do so today. We're here with the author of the book, Declassified, the low key to the high-strung world of classical music, Arianna Warsaw-Fan Rauch, here on the Mike Wagner Show. And Arianna, before we talk about your book, you have accomplished a really long list of accomplishments in the King's Scroll, and that's in your book as well too. Let's cover a bit. You performed Carnegie Hall, Boston Symphony, the Ravinia, La Jolla Summerfest, Aspen Music. You've been a concert master at the Deutsche Symphony Orchestra, the Juilliard, McGill, and Pacific Music. And you also toured with Sir James Galway, Chris Botti, and more as well too. And maybe tell us about some of your experiences. Like what was like the best concert you've done, and maybe like your favorite concert hall, the best experience you've had?
I mean, it's really hard to pick because there are so many different ways of measuring the best concerts, right? I think the most fun I've had probably it would have been quite small concerts. I really like house concerts. So any of the concerts I've given at people's houses or in small salons where you can interact with the audience, that would have been the most fun for
Oh,
me.
nice.
Yeah, I just find it, I think a lot of the music that was composed by these great composers wasn't really meant to be performed in big halls. So chamber music, there's a reason it's called chamber music, you know,
Hmm.
to be in a chamber. And for me, there's a level of interaction there that's really fun. But certainly some of the most memorable concerts were with Chris Bodie, who's this amazing Grammy-winning trumpet player. And with him, the shows were just, I mean, the level of touring, the travel, everything was just so first class. And the halls were amazing. There was this one absolutely insane show that we did where I suddenly found myself backstage with Aretha Franklin and Helen Mirren,
Wow.
and so Herbie Hancock was there. But I was actually like, you know, a foot away from Helen Mirren and Aretha Franklin. It was just insane. And on that same night, when I went on stage, we did one of our songs was a version of Nessun Dorma, which is an aria by Puccini, and Madeline Albright played drum set for that. It was
Really? Madeline
so weird.
Albright? Oh
She
my
was on the drums.
goodness. Ooh, I
Yeah,
think I've seen just about everything. Madeline Albright. Wow.
yeah, on the drums. It was a very weird experience. It felt very surreal. But I certainly think about that night a lot.
Hmm. And what would you say your most favorite concert venue you've ever been at?
I guess I really like the Kennedy Center. I think that it's just such a great complex. You have all the great halls there. Um, but it's very hard to, you know, there have been a lot of great spaces and it's very hard to measure. Or Suntory Hall in Japan. That's a really cool.
Oh, nice. I've heard about that.
Yeah, the acoustics are amazing.
Hmm. You make me think of that one place in Sydney as well, too, which is I how these neat triangles that just hung over
Oh,
there
the
too.
Opera House. Yes, so I've never played there and I've never actually even been to Australia, but that is on my list because I would love to go there.
Oh, that'd be so nice. I think that's on my bucket list as well, too.
Yeah.
That's if the pandemic gods will lets us through and everything.
Yeah.
So and of course, let's get you a book about Declassified, a low-key guide to the high-strung world of classical music. You just start off basically that you emphasize that most people love classical music and most people hate classical music. Depends on what specific piece of music that they're listening to. So, really interesting take on that is like, it can be used for just about everything and anything. You hear it on, backgrounds on movies, games, and, also hear like, piping over the speakers and a lot of the music that's influenced, by all the greats as well, too. It's like love it or hate it that, just take a perspective on it and just a simple insight to the industry as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, one of my goals with this book is just to give to no one needs my permission for anything, but I feel like with classical music, there's this sense with a lot of people that they have to sort of commit to listening to all of it and to liking all of it in order to get started. So you have people going around saying, I love classical music. I say that all the time, by the way. And you have people saying, I hate classical music. But the point is, this is hundreds and hundreds of years of different kinds of music. You can't possibly feel one thing about all of it, right? It's like, I mean, if you imagine, you know, someone, the early rock and roll, and then if you compare it to, I don't know, One Direction, like who, you don't necessarily have to like all of that, but that's what people do with classical music. They bundle it all into one genre and they forget that so much time, so many styles elapsed between these composers. So Bach sounds really different than Brahms and it sounds totally different than Shostakovich. And yeah, so I want to sort of break down the genre into these styles, but also tell people it's okay if you don't respond to one style, you should keep trying and maybe try some of the other styles because there's some really great music in here. And I'm sure that I really, you know, it's corny to say, but I'm sure there's something in it for everyone.
Hmm. And of course, I hear people all the time, especially from the heavy metal genre as well, too. Many of ours are being influenced by Mozart as well, too. If Mozart were alive today, he would outsell Metallica, Led Zeppelin, and Nirvana, and just about every metal artist all across the board.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that actually it's very cool how much influence there is now, and people are sampling a lot of this music too. You think about for instance, the Chef's Table intro is this Max Richter Vivaldi, I think it's called Recomposed, and it's based on the Vivaldi Four Seasons, the winter, and it's a very cool piece. It sounds quite similar at the beginning, but it goes further and further away, and I think it does really cool things. And now with social media, with Spotify, Apple Music, there's so much access that there wasn't before to classical music, and I just think it's nice to give people a jumping off point or a point of entry for their curiosity as it arrives.
Mm-hmm. He also covered the seven main compositional periods too, and tell us about that. And there was even one of them went through a very dark period.
Yeah. So I go after the medieval period a lot because I hate medieval music.
Off
It's
with
just
their heads.
well, it's so dark and it's so depressing. And when I hear it, I instantly feel so sad and miserable. But I know there are a lot of people who like it, and that's also perfectly fine with me. The point with all of this is really just to highlight the differences between the styles. So the medieval period, this is like the 1100s, and sounds completely different then you have the Renaissance period came next, the Baroque period, that's when you had people like Bach. Then next was the classical period. This is when you have Mozart and Haydn, and you get to the Romantic period next, which is Brahms, Tchaikovsky. It's a little bit more lush, the sounds, bigger orchestras, more instruments, more expressivity. And then it gets into the 20th century, and this is where 20th century music, I mean, it can sound like anything. Some of it sounds like medieval music, some of it sounds like romantic music, some of it sounds electronic, or
or a mix of pretty much everything.
Exactly. And actually, as we get into the contemporary period, there are more and more composers doing really interesting things, blending the different styles. So
Mm-hmm.
it's yeah, it's an exciting.
How would you describe today's classical music going into 2022 and 23? How would you describe it?
Well, again, I mean, it's just very hard to put your finger on one kind of sound. It tends to be a really cool mixing pot of melting pot, right? A
Mm-hmm.
really cool
Yes,
mixture
indeed.
of all of the different styles from the genre, and new styles and new sounds as well. So I've heard some really cool pieces that just combine everything.
Mm-hmm. And of course too, of course you talk about the Spotify list where people come up with a list of all the favorite music and everything. There's also a must list that's required too. So it's like, what's like a must list that you have when it comes to music as well too? What is a must list when it comes to like having like a short list of what to listen to and everything? What is like the must list for you? That's like the ultimate requirement.
Okay, so in the book I have must listen for each period and for each compositional medium. So like the must listen operas, the must listen symphonies, because I also want people to hear the difference between. Yeah, I mean, some people might respond really well to opera. Some people might not like that the voices sound so different than speaking voices. But for overall, this is impossible. But if I had to say right now, based purely on my mood, and I would change it in 5 minutes because you can't possibly, you can't choose one piece. But right now, this second, what springs to mind is Shostakovich String Quartet number 8. This, I think, especially for people who feel like they might not like the classical music that they've heard in commercials or in the background at weddings, this is a totally different kind of classical music, and it's incredibly powerful.
And certainly is too. And they're also using in movies as well too, like from Raging Bull, Shawshank Redemption, Silence of the Lambs, and everything else. And I also think of some others too, but those ones just pretty much stand out as well too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a list of needle drops from great movies, or great movies that use this great music really effectively. And so for me, my favorite one is probably in Shawshank Redemption. There's this Mozart aria from the Marriage of Figaro that is put to use just stunningly when I think Tim Robbins, he plays it over the prison speaker. And so
Yes,
all the
yes.
inmates are in, and it's just gorgeous how it's juxtaposed against the, the starkness of the prison, and you have everyone looking up and listening. It's just gorgeous.
That certainly is interesting. And I just thought of a couple of movies as well, too. I think there was one piece in Clockwork Orange that I remember listening to. I can't think of the piece, but that was like where he went on a killing spree. And I think there was also a couple that I'm sure it's going to come to mind later on as well, too. But maybe some of the craziest superstitions in the classical canon, like Beethoven's hair and the curse of the Ninth Symphony, and all these curses that just take place, superstitions, and what you do, what you don't do, and everything else. It's like, Beethoven, and oh my gosh, it's like, you had some were just like creative geniuses, and some are just, out there basically. So
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I mean, again, this is so much history is involved in classical music, or you don't need it to listen to it, but I think it's an interesting side of it. And there are so many great stories that we've preserved through these composers who were, yeah, as you say, often geniuses. And there are legends like Paganini, who was this incredible violinist and violist, and he wrote a set of just impossible caprices for the violin, among other things. There was this legend that he sold his soul to the devil in exchange for his violin technique. And that would explain why his music is so hard for everyone else to play.
oh, because he put that curse in declaration, he was like the first to do so. And we thought Charlie Daniels did that, supposedly.
Yeah, and there are other, I mean, so many great stories. There's this love triangle or throuple. It's a very confusing situation with Robert Schumann and Johannes Brahms and Clara Schumann. It's sort of within the industry, it's a really famous kind of mystery just based on the letters that were written between the three of them. And it's something that maybe outside of the industry isn't as well known, but it's really fascinating to just read and to try to decipher what the nature of their relationships were. And you have Beethoven's Immortal Beloved. So Beethoven wrote a set of letters to someone, we still don't know who she was. He calls her his immortal beloved. And it's quoted a lot, this how does it go? It's ever mine, ever yours, ever mine, ever ours.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. And I have to reread that part of my book. But he is ever thine, that's in there. Okay. So anyway, he is very expressive and incredibly, they're just like out of a romance novel. And it's just crazy because you get this sense that this was this one of a kind love that he shared with this woman, and yet no one knows who she is, or if he even sent the letters, and there are no other letters surrounding these to suggest that they had a relationship beyond whatever these three were, and they were written on 3 consecutive days. So it's just a very confusing puzzle for historians, and it's also exciting to think about this. Beethoven was kind of cranky, and it's interesting to think of him having this.
And of course, Mozart having a dirty mind, Tchaikovsky having several affairs, and of course, I remember watching Amadeus. He always laughed, go, oh, like that. It's like, that kind of suggested it too, and some of the stories as well too, and of course, some of the common stereotypes in the industry. People, when you mentioned classical music, they associate, elitist, snobbish, arrogant, or it's like you're in the upper rich, the uber rich, you're a freaking billionaire. But in reality, it's like that, everybody can listen to classical music, and maybe can just, break down some of the stereotypes, and it's not necessarily for the top 1% in the world.
No. And in fact, the composers so this is also a whole chapter in the book is dedicated to this, but the composers were often employed by the uber rich, but they themselves were not rich mostly, and they often hated their patrons. So there are all kinds of funny letters that Mozart wrote, that Bach wrote, complaining about their employers. And I think the association between snobbery and classical music was born out of necessity. It's not because the music is snobby. It's not because the composers were snobby. It's just that someone needed to pay them. So that's how it started. And it's unfortunate that this is the image that it has today, because so much of this music speaks to oppression and actually the exact opposite, struggles. Think of Beethoven. He was deaf by the time he wrote, fully deaf by the time he wrote some of his most famous works. And this, I mean, this represents or embodies a kind of overcoming of obstacles that I don't think we can call snobby, this kind of determination. He wasn't privileged, is my point, and he certainly wasn't rich either.
Mm-hmm. Of course, you're getting that stereotype as well, too. And of course, you also have, people in the classical music world don't necessarily play in the concert halls all the time. You can also play in some other venues. And I know some really good violinists that even content you, like you say, you play out of the home. You also play at parties and everything else. And there are some that, play in restaurants and bars and all that. And my daughter recently spotted some violinists, just playing in a little coffee shop or something. So it's not just necessarily, getting a job at a concert hall. You can just about do it anywhere, or even like as a freelancer too. So
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah. And most of the musicians I know are freelancers, and there's just a huge range in terms of how successful you can be as a freelancer. So there's really glamorous freelancing, and then there's also freelancing where, you really have to hustle to make ends meet.
hmm and of course too that you also feature some instruments as well too, and some of the personalities, and maybe like associations, violins, cellos, and all that, and the personality types. So maybe just like the fact that just have like an association of the two, like break down the instruments, like say the violin, associate what personality and everything. That's all in the book too.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's important for people to realize that musicians are humans and classical musicians are, as we discussed, they're not snobs. So the way that my Juilliard classmates and I speak about this music is so different than the way that you imagine, or most people imagine, audience members speaking about it. And it's just I wanted to sort of shine some light on the quirkiness and the range of personalities that I associate with each instrument and or each section of the orchestra.
Oh, you can give us an example on that now you mentioned it.
Oh, yeah. So for instance, violinists, I'm a violinist, so I can say this part. They are incredibly type A and sort of perfectionist, overachievers. We sort of constantly trying to prove ourselves. We're always, wanting validation. And then you have singers who are probably, they're similar, but it's more, I think there's more confidence there. So they're like, the divas. And you have violists. There are so many viola jokes. And it's not fair, because violists are really, I think, the best sports, because they go into it knowing how many viola jokes they are, and they decide to play the viola anyway. So of course they're lovely people, but the stereotype is that they're all very, very stupid and incompetent and nobody likes them. But that's not the
at,
reality. It's just,
at least they have a job or so. So
yeah, exactly. And they obviously have a certain amount of skill and talent as well.
And of course you also break down too. It's like you also got the drums, and you got the cellos, and then you also got the harps, and then you can just tell about those personality types.
Yeah, so we have the bassists are really chill and laid back. Cellists they come across the best in the book, because just the cellists I know are such lovely people. They're so warm, they're so down to earth. They're very relaxed and accommodating. And then you have pianists who tend to be very intellectual, and it goes on, but it's yeah, there are a lot of different people that make up the industry. And
hmm And certainly too, and of course, for those who have never been to a concert, for at a classical music hall or anything like that, how do you conduct yourself? We'll find out 1 minute. You listen to the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Also brought to you by official sponsor of the Mike Widener Show, international warring author Mia Moses Missing, available on Amazon and paperback and ebook. We'll be back with the author of Declassified, a low key to the high string world of classical music, Arianna Warsaw-Fan Rauch, after this time out. We're back with the author of Declassified, a low key guide to the high strung world of classical music, Arianna Warsaw-Fan Rauch, here on the Mike Widener Show. She's accomplished violinist, and she's toured the world and everything, and gave some insight to the world of classical music. And of course, you go to a concert hall and everything, and of course, there's some etiquette involved, and maybe just cover some of the etiquette, especially the cover part is like when to applaud and not to applaud. Maybe give us some tips on that.
Yeah. So I don't want to give away too much of the book, but
That's okay.
there's a section on etiquette, because I want to encourage people to listen to this music however they would like. So that means if you don't want to go to a concert hall, you don't have to go to a concert hall to listen to classical music. You can listen. Yeah, we spoke about Spotify, Apple Music. There's YouTube. There are wonderful performances on YouTube for free. So this is a perfectly valid way of listening. But if you do want to go to a concert at a major symphony hall or at an opera or a ballet, even a smaller series, then there are conventions that I think it's just helpful to know about, so that when you go, you feel comfortable. And so in the book, I compare it to, like, you can watch the Super Bowl without knowing what a first down is. But if you do, you're not going to feel like you really belong there. You're not going to be at ease. So I think it's just good to know what the conventions are, and that way you can feel a little bit more at home. If you do encounter any snobs, then you can hold your own against them. So I talk about, when to clap, when not to clap. It's a little hard to do without, because you have to explain then the nature of the construction of the piece in order to explain when to clap. So I break down the compositional structure so that you can figure out when the applause is in comparison to that. And of course, the applauding rules are different for different types of pieces. So it's very detailed, but I think funny, hopefully, the way that I've written it. And then also, in general, my biggest point is that if you go to a concert and you do know when to clap, but someone around you doesn't know when to clap, don't be a dick about it, because it's a perfectly human thing to hear something that excites you and to want to clap about it. And as a performer, I can say there's nothing wrong, there's nothing offensive about someone clapping because they're moved by the music. So there are moments, of course, when it's quiet, when people are still playing, when it's not generally good, but it probably wouldn't feel right to anyone to clap then anyway. But if someone claps in another place and there's an excuse for it, a justification for it, then I think it's important to be welcoming of those people and not to make them feel like pariahs, because
Okay.
we've all been in situations where we feel like we don't know how to behave.
It's also a learning tool as well too, and to know when to do it and not to do it, especially first time, and whatever else. I'm guilty of it myself too. It's like you clap and you realize, oh crap, why'd I do that? So I've been there myself, so I am guilty just like everybody else. And what else do you want to get? What else you want readers to get from the book?
Well, mostly I just want people to develop a curiosity, or if they already have curiosity, then I want to answer some of their questions to feed that curiosity, to give them a little bit of context for this amazing music, and to help them navigate it. Because again, when you're talking about hundreds of years of music, there are so many styles and pieces to choose from. It's just overwhelming. So I want to give people a foothold, and then just explore some of the more exciting topics that surround it. And also I mention in it some of the amazing artists who are doing great things today, because I think it's important for people to know where to look to, in terms of performers as well as composers, to feel like they have guidance.
And certainly do as well too. Where can you find the book at?
I think the book should be basically everywhere. I went into a Barnes and Noble the other day, and there was one or a couple were there on the table, and it's certainly on Amazon. There's an audiobook. I know it's on Audible, but I think it's available on several platforms. I think it should be hopefully in most bookstores.
Well, we'll see to it that Bach and Beethoven and Mozart and everybody will get those there. So we'll see to it. So we're here with author Arianna Warsaw-Fan Rauch of Declassified, a low key to the high-strung world of classical music here on the Mike Wagner Show. Just a few more minutes. We'd love to have you back as well, too. Maybe a little performance or two. And what can we expect from you in 2022 and 23, Arianna?
Well, so for this month, I'm focused on the book. I have some events coming up, and then I don't know, maybe another book.
Hmm. I think they'll attune to that. And who do you consider your biggest influence in your career?
Oh my gosh. Um, my dad probably. My dad and my mom, both. My dad's a pianist, my mom's a writer. This book is both of them.
Ah, that's a nice marriage. I like that. And
Yeah.
what's the best advice you can give to anybody at this point?
Um, I would say just general advice. People should be adaptable and think about where their skills meet up with what the world needs.
Hmm. I like that. That's really interesting. Once again, we're with author Arianna Warsaw-Fan Rauch of Declassified here on the Mike Wagner Show. Arianna, very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely fantastic. Learned a lot from you. Looking forward to having you soon. Keep in touch. Keep us up to date. Love to have you back. And once again, what's your website? How do people contact you? Where can people purchase or check out your book?
So my website is any number of name. I have like four names, and you can go to any of them from my website. But www.ariannawarsawfan.com is an easier one to spell, I think. So that's like Arianna with two N's, Warsaw like the capital of Poland, and fan like an electric fan, and all one word. And then in terms of I'm on social media. I'm on TikTok and Instagram, and my handles at _Warsaw fan for both of those.
We will certainly check that out. Once again, Arianna, a very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely amazing. Looking forward to it soon. Keep us up to date. Keep in touch. Love to have you back. We wish all best. And Arianna, you definitely have a great future ahead of you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you.